A Florida restaurant is serving up some holiday cheer by playing Christmas music for their patrons. But not all the customers are loving it down in Florida. One patron left this note on the back of the receipt, writing, quote, "Christmas music was offensive. Consider playing holiday music or less religious themed." The owner posted the note online, and it is now going viral. Michael Lugo is the owner of Michael's Tasting Room, and he joins us live now. Good morning, Michael. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right, so the server gets that note on the back of the receipt, shows it to you. What was your first reaction?
It was a little, crazy because you start thinking, God, now Christmas, everyone's a critic about everything you do in the restaurant business, so we understand that, and it comes in with the territory. But, the poor staff, anytime they get any notes in the back, they kind of like always take it to heart. So they brought it to me, and when I look at it, just the first thing I say is, man, I know that we're going to be criticized about, something service-related, food-related or something, but now the Christmas music. So I just told her, I said, don't worry about this. We'll let the people give you your opinions on this. And we literally just took a quick little snap of it and left it at that. And then before you know it, man, we were getting emails from people all over. Some people were asking us not to play it. They were coming to dinner that weekend. Some people saying that, please keep playing it. And we, as a restaurant, we're in the middle of the nation's oldest city in St. Augustine, which celebrates the Christmas holiday wholeheartedly. We have famous nights of lights that starts in November, ends in January. Our restaurant is right in the heart of the historic district. So we embrace it. We've been in business 10 years, and people come from all over. Millions of visitors come during the holidays and really enjoy the city for its holiday festivities. So, to us, it's part of the traditions that I think keep on getting washed away in America.
Yes.
I feel like it's just not really a safe space for people of different faith traditions. Would you guys like to sign?
I will totally sign.
All right, awesome, yeah.
Ever since the Trump election, people have been emboldened to, be throwing Merry Christmas and Christmas carols everywhere you go.
All right, so the group Campus Reform taking to campus to see exactly how many students they could dupe into signing a fake petition. Their phony argument that Christmas is not inclusive enough. And in less than 2 hours, nearly 20 students signed up to stop Santa.
And the parents don't want Satan in their schools. They don't want the Satanists to have access to their children, and their wishes are not being respected. Children deserve the best. They deserve to be protected, and Satanism will only harm them.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst the...
That's the Satanic Temple of Seattle has rented space to run an after-school Satan club. Well, I think the most important thing to remember is this is not part of the school or the district. We're complying with state law and a Supreme Court ruling that says they have the right to do that.
I'm really compassionate about just love in general. I mean, being able to share it on a human level and not have it forced down your throat. The word Satan it's so dark, It's like it's an instant dark cloud, and it creates kind of a hateful.
Satan to us is a liberator, a lightener, bringer of knowledge. He represents individuality and freedom and free thought. So
ironic name of the school.
Point Defiance.
Point Defiance. I think that's very apt. I think this is going to be a lot of fun and a really good learning experience for everybody.
America's state-sponsored media is set for a shakeup. The U.S. Congress recently voted to abolish the Broadcasting Board of Governors and replace it with a single chief executive appointed by the president, who would ultimately be in charge of all outlets that receive federal funding. RT's Alexei Rashevsky reports.
These days, when U.S. officials want to denigrate a journalist, they use words like propaganda or state-funded media. And we, over the years, of course, have heard a lot of such, including one instance when a U.S. State Department official singled out RT for whatever reason that is. Let's take a listen.
Russia Today network has deployed to promote President Putin's fantasy.
The intensification of Russian propaganda.
Propaganda bullhorn. That is the state-sponsored Russia Today program.
I'm not going to put Russia Today on the same level with the rest of you who are representing independent media outlets.
Hold on.
For instance, just this last Sunday, talking to the Voice of America Russian edition, David Kramer from the Institute of McCain actually said that RT America employees here working in the United States are actually trying to make people question their government and make them doubtful of the system. And according to him, there should be a line drawn between real reporters, such as those of Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, New York Times, and Washington Post, and those from RT or Sputnik. The biggest contradiction here is that almost the very same people have been continuously saying that the United States is losing the information war with Russia. Let's take a listen.
We are in an information war, and we are losing that war.
They're doing things against us, and they are winning.
Russia Today can be heard in English. Do we have an equivalent that can be heard in Russian?
Well, how do you reconcile these two? It seems that the U.S. Senate has found a very interesting way, quietly, without much fanfare or coverage. They tucked in a reform into the latest National Defense Authorization Act for next year, which would mean that the Broadcasting Board of Governors, the organization which had 9 members, including the U.S. Secretary of State, and was destined to control the state-owned media for its unbiased approach to news, will now be basically run by a single person, by a CEO appointed directly by the president. And you would think that this is a new thing with Trump coming into power. But in fact, most of these reforms have been happening under President Obama, and he still is in office. So this is something coming from there. Nonetheless, this new provision would mean that all the organizations within the BBG, which includes Radio Free Europe, Voice of America, will now have their senior officers, will now have their editors appointed by a special designated CEO appointed by the President of the United States. So basically, in a nutshell, the United States is now trying to do the exactly same thing that they have been accusing Russia and RT of for many, many years now.
Germany's Justice Minister Heiko Maas believes that German authorities should make it a priority to prosecute the perpetrators of fake news on different social media platforms. He stated defamation and malicious gossip are not covered under freedom of speech. Justice authorities must prosecute that even on the internet. Anyone who tries to manipulate the public discussion with lies needs to be aware of the consequences.
Now, world powers are working hard to punish North Korea for its continual nuclear missile provocations, and part of these efforts include clamping down on the regime's access to energy sources. But it appears Pyongyang is getting some outside help from its longtime ally. Kim Mok-yeon has more.
This ship is cruising down Pyongyang's Taedong River. On top of the vessel, you can make out solar panels installed to absorb the sun's rays. It appears North Korea is using solar power as a source of energy. Lately, Pyongyang state-run media has been broadcasting news about leader Kim Jong-un's plans to develop energy sources.
We will build a modernized natural power system that can produce various types of energy, ranging from solar energy to wind power.
A report released by the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission says North Korea's energy situation has improved in the recent weeks. It said China has been supporting North Korea's energy needs. The report says China has increased its shipments of raw materials to the north as the number of vehicles operating in the country and the number of imported cars from China has increased sharply. The revelations are likely to spark concern as other world powers have been focused on strengthening sanctions on North Korea as part of international efforts to rein in the regime's nuclear and missile ambitions. Kim Mok-yeon, Arirang News.
It is slow going for the Iraqi army in its effort to recapture Mosul. Senior Foreign Affairs correspondent Greg Palcott tells us perhaps even slower than we thought.
more than 6 weeks into efforts to get ISIS out of the Iraqi city of Mosul, and the fight is not looking any easier. Just 20% of Mosul so far has been freed to the militants by Iraqi forces backed by U.S. airstrikes and support, according to the U.S. coalition spokesman in Baghdad.
The Iraqi security forces are working very hard to get this done, but they're up against a fanatical enemy, very dangerous fighting in the streets.
Making things more complicated, the million-plus residents of Mosul thought to still be in the city. Some are being executed by ISIS, many more being used as human shields. And they are suffering. Along with shortages of food and medicine, clashes have knocked out clean drinking water for over 500,000.
We have nothing. No running water and no electricity. We've not had water for almost 20 days.
75,000 have, in fact, fled the fighting in Mosul. Some officials reportedly now regretting the decision to tell residents there to remain in their homes during the battle.
We are facing a humanitarian catastrophe if the problem is not solved as soon as possible.
As the casualties mount among civilians and military, all of this adding urgency to get the job done. A route leading west from the city to ISIS-held ground in Syria is now cut off, along with key bridges in the city as forces move in from the northeast and south. The number of car bombs is down, militant casualties are up.
The Iraqi security forces have completely encircled the city from all sides. There is no real avenue of egress for the enemy, so they are largely going to be destroyed in place.
The question is, how long will it take to get ISIS out of Mosul? Colonel Dorian would not commit to a time frame, simply alluding to the fact that it could take several months, maybe bloody months. Brett.
Greg, thank you.
Iraqi forces fighting their way through Mosul, inflicting ISIS casualties. Tonight, U.S. officials say the terror group is on the ropes, down to between 12,000 and 15,000 battle-ready fighters, its lowest numbers ever. How do they stretch those 12 to 15,000 fighters out?
ISIS is still mounting concentrated military campaigns. Very recently, they retook Palmyra in central Syria. A month and a half ago, they also tried to mount a very sophisticated campaign against Kirkuk city. ISIS is also launching spectacular attacks.
But a U.S. official points out the coalition has killed about 50,000 ISIS fighters since 2014, and the group's safe havens are dwindling. According to U.S. officials who released this map, all the areas in dark and light green represent territory ISIS has lost, 28% in Syria, and more than 60% of its territory in Iraq as of the end of November. And tonight, there are indications that ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is under perhaps more pressure than ever. U.S. officials say he's in deep, deep hiding.
We also know he hides with slaves and all sorts of terrible things. I mean, this guy is one of the most despicable we've ever seen. So we're doing all we can to find and eliminate him.
Officials say nearly all of Baghdadi's deputies have been eliminated. 3 of his top lieutenants were taken out in recent days in ISIS's stronghold of Raqqa, Syria. U.S. officials say they were responsible for planning attacks in Paris and Brussels last year. A U.S. intelligence official telling CNN tonight the coalition's made great strides in targeting ISIS leaders in places like Raqqa. And CNN is told ISIS's vaunted recruiting arm, featuring videos from English-speaking militants like Jihadi John, has been decimated.
The United States government has killed a lot of ISIS propagandists, and as you know, the amount of propaganda that ISIS has put out has gone down pretty dramatically.
But tonight, experts warn the terror group isn't close to total defeat.
It still controls many places, to include Mosul, where it has managed to keep its defenses against a coalition operation that has been ongoing for the past almost 2 months. It still holds terrain in northern Syria. It still holds terrain in 2 or 3 other major zones across both countries.
And tonight we're told the coalition is really not getting much help from Vladimir Putin. A short time ago, I spoke to a U.S. intelligence official who told me that despite Russia's claims that they were intervening in Syria to target ISIS, the Russians have overwhelmingly targeted rebel groups that threaten the Assad regime. They are there to prop up Bashar Assad Wolf and not much else.
That's absolutely correct. You've also reported a lot on ISIS casualties, Brian. What about American casualties during this war against ISIS?
Well, Brett McGurk, President Obama's top envoy in this war on ISIS, Wolf, he says A total of 5 American military personnel have been killed in this campaign. You would be hard-pressed to find any other war in American history where a U.S.-led coalition's killed 50,000 enemy fighters and lost only 5.
Cases of H5N8 bird flu have been detected in wild ducks in northern France amid a recent outbreak of the disease in Europe. France, Europe's largest poultry producer, is still recovering from a severe epidemic which led to a total halting of duck and goose production in the southwest of the country in January. We've seen that there have been cases of wild birds contaminating domestic poultry, said Loïc Evin of the French Agriculture Ministry. It's a risk that we clearly can't rule out. That's why it's very important all the farmers' protection measures are taken to avoid the transfer of the virus from the wild to our livestock. Outbreaks in neighbouring countries, including the Netherlands, Switzerland and Germany, prompted the ministry to impose additional precautions at farms and restrict hunting and bird gathering earlier this month.
A strain of the avian influenza virus that's even more fatal than previous strains is spreading quickly across Korea. Last week, authorities culled tens of thousands of chickens and ducks infected with the H5N6 virus at farms in Jeollanam-do and Chungcheongbuk-do provinces. And since Saturday, dozens of chickens and ducks in Gyeonggi-do and Chungcheongbuk-do provinces have actually died of the same virus. 4 duck farms in Chungcheongbuk-do province have reported suspected cases of the viral strain, and the regional government has confirmed the viral strain at 3 other farms nearby. Over 250,000 chickens and ducks at 10 farms within a 3-kilometre radius of the area are being killed to prevent the virus from spreading further.
It's the first time something like this has ever happened. We checked with the folks at the CDC about that. This notion of warning a particular population of people not to go to a specific American town, that's never happened before. So in and of itself, that's significant. And of course, it's pregnant women in particular, because this virus is so associated with these birth defects. So they're saying pregnant women, women who are thinking about getting pregnant, they should just not travel to this particular area. It's about a one by 1 mile sort of square area right now. My guess is that area is going to grow. We've known that Zika virus was going to arrive in the United States. We've known it was going to start spreading locally, that is by mosquitoes. And so it's probably that area is going to grow. I don't think it's going to grow quickly or widely, but it's going to grow more than what it is right now.
What is the CDC suggesting women do who are worried about being infected?
Well, they've put an area on it, of course, this area around Miami, again, that 1 mile square area, and also a date on it. So they're saying if you've been to this area since June 15th, on June 15th or after June 15th, if you are pregnant, you should go get tested. That is really the advice. You should get tested. There are blood tests now. There are also urine tests to try and figure out if you've been infected, if you've been exposed to the virus. If you're someone, and this is frightening, I mean, certainly for women who are pregnant, but if they have been tested positive, they are going to then get a series of ultrasounds probably to help monitor the progress of the baby. It by no means is certain that if you've developed a Zika infection while pregnant, that these birth defects are going to result. But there is the possibility, about a 1 to 10% possibility. So the obstetrician has to be aware of this and monitor the baby's progress.